As you know, one of the missions of the Rebel Tribe podcast is to really showcase some of the amazing nonprofits that are out there that are designed to help women. And I've got a really special guest today who has it's just an amazing organization. I was so impressed when I met her and saw what they're doing. So welcome to the Rebel Tribe podcast, where empowerment meets attitude and sass meets savvy. We are not just another podcast, ladies. We are your virtual tribe of fierce females ready to conquer the world. So join us as we smash through those stereotypes and break those barriers and redefine what it means to be a woman in today's world. It's time to unleash your inner rebel and rock the world on your terms. And my guest today is helping ladies do just that. She is Sandra Warmack, founder of Nicole's House, which is it, like I said, it's just an amazing organization. So Sandra, please say hello.
Hello, thank you. I'm honored to be here.
So, can you tell us just a little bit about the whole story behind Nicole's House? Because when you shared that with me, I was I don't want to say I was in tears, but I was pretty close. Okay. I was pretty close because I've been in a similar situation, which I shared with you. Um, and so, yes, the story kind of hit home.
Well, so Nicole's House is a 1 year Christ-centered transition living program for women coming out of addiction and often incarceration. And it's named after my daughter, Nicole. And my daughter died from an accidental drug overdose. And so I left my secular job in order to form Nicole's House because it's my mission that no other mother or spouse or sibling receives the call that I received when she had passed away. So
So
we started we
how,
started Nicole's House seven years ago, and we've served 71 women, and 58 of those women are still sober, productive citizens back in their communities today.
I had no idea it had that many. That's a lot. I mean, that's way more than I thought, actually. How does Nicole's legacy live on through this program? Because I know that's a big part of why you started it.
Well, there's a scripture that says what the enemy meant for evil, God meant for good. And so that's been my motive, my mission, my focus is, again, like I said, that no other person gets that call. And thankfully, of the 71 women who have been who we have served, none of them have overdosed. None of them have gone back into their addiction. None of them had to leave because they were using in our program. So
That's great. That's awesome. Those are some pretty fabulous statistics, by the way. I did a little research and you are having amazing results. So we know it works. What was the moment?
yes.
How did you know? When did you know that this mission was something you had to pursue? Because I imagine it was difficult. I mean, you're losing your daughter, and a lot of mothers, I mean, myself included, would probably be wallowing in grief and no, you took this and made it something positive. When did you know that this was something you had to do?
Well, so I'm going to be transparent. I think I was probably like every other parent for a while. I was embarrassed because I was not able to um, impact my daughter, influence my daughter enough for her to stay sober. And so I was a little embarrassed, a little ashamed. And so I didn't really talk about it a lot for the first few years. And then in my job as a nursing home administrator, some things came up and I just felt like I turned 66 and I felt like I just needed a job change because what I thought was my mission wasn't really working out or recognized as that. And so I felt the Lord dropped in my spirit that you are to form a transitional living program. And I said, I don't know what that is, but if you tell me what it is or tell me what to do, I will do that. And so in the meantime, I had learned that my grandson, Nicole's son, he had gone to juvenile for heroin addiction. And when he got out of juvenile, he went to a transitional living home in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And that was the thing that changed his life. And so I began to look at transitional homes I visited 4 states, 29 of them in 4 states, just to see what was the best practices and what would be the most efficient way to do it. So it came out of my frustration in my secular career, and thought, I'm going to go do this because, and that's what God has honored.
So what exactly is Nicole's house, and how does it support women that are recovering from addiction?
We are a transitional living program, so there are some differences. A lot of people hear about halfway houses. Halfway, we need all of them, folks. I mean, people need a place to go to when they come out of jail or prison, or when they come out of rehab. And so often they don't have a place to go to. So we need any of those programs are better than no program at all. But I didn't want to have a halfway house, because a halfway house is where people in addiction live together with no real guidance. So transitional living made more sense for me, because I didn't want to offer just a place for women to come and get sober, but I wanted it to be a place where once they left, they had a lifestyle and a way that they could return to their communities successful. So we're all encompassing. So we look at faith, because we are faith-based. So we think that's at the core. And we look at your faith. What has it been? What do you want it to be? Where are you at in your spiritual walk? And then we connect you with people who mirror where you are in your walk. We do recovery, and our ladies attend 3 to 5 meetings a week. They get a sponsor to whom they are accountable, and then they break down those steps, whether it's a 10-step program or a 12-step program. They break those down one-on-one and how it applies to them personally. So that's part of their recovery. We also do random drug screens each week, and a woman must test negative in order to stay at Nicole's house. We are 0 tolerance. So there's no 3 strikes and you're out at a lot of places, because I know that the mindset of someone who's in addiction is that they can quit at any time. And so they'll push the envelope and they'll push those three opportunities. So we're 0 tolerance. If you test positive, you leave our program. Our next is support system. So we want to make sure that we connect you with people who are going to support you after you leave our 1-year program, so that that person isn't returning to their old playground, their old neighborhood, to the people that they know. That is so often why people aren't successful when they come out of rehab or incarceration, because they don't have anywhere to go but back to what was familiar to them. And so we want to make sure that they have a support system that's going to support them and keep them solid in their sobriety and solid in their commitment and accountability for their finances, for their legal issues, for anything that would apply for them when they leave. We have volunteers that they can become close to. Every woman gets a mentor. And we make sure that at church there are like-minded people, or that at recovery places there are like-minded people, or in the workplace there are those people that can become their support system. And self-care is our next pillar of our 6 pillars. Self-care is important. So if you are couch surfing, or you are in jail, or you are living in a hotel, you do not have to clean or cook, and you don't have any of those abilities typically. So we want to make sure that you take care of yourself. We make sure that you get health care coverage. We make sure that you get mental health coverage and assistance every week. And we also have dental resources, vision resources, bicycles, cooking and nutrition classes from the University of Arkansas Extension Office. Any of those things that are going to improve your level of care. When a woman comes, we make sure that they have all their hygiene items they need. We make sure they have 2 or 3 outfits, that they have shoes, and we even provide makeup so that they can just feel better about themselves. It's so important in the self-care. And then there's our life skills. So what is it that you need to know when you leave here to make you successful? Do you need to know how to cook? Do you need to know how to budget? Do you know how to balance a checkbook? All of our ladies have a checking account and a savings account. Do you need childcare classes? One of our ladies had a child who was deaf, and we brought somebody in to teach them sign language. And we have 11 educators that come in and share about boundaries. There's a 4-week class on boundaries, communication, conflict resolution, time management, triggers, all of those things that you want to learn how to manage emotionally as well as physically, so that you can be successful and not be overwhelmed when you're out in your community. And then the last one, of course, is going to be careers. If you don't have your GED and you'd like your GED, we're going to help you with that. We'll coach you with that. And if you're interested in vocational training of some sort, we're going to help you with that as well. And then in the meantime, we're going to connect you with felon-friendly employers. Our ladies are going to work about 24 hours a week, not 40, so that they can concentrate on the other program elements. But those are all the things that we put into place so that after their 1 year is complete, they feel like they are ready to return back to their community and that they can be successful with all the tools that we've given them.
And all those things, I think, are what make you different. Because like I said, I've done a little bit of research, and you have, compared to some other places, an extraordinary success rate. And all of those things that you just listed, I think have a big impact on what makes you different than so many other programs. Can you share a success story? I know I know it's private, but can you share a success story of a woman who's come through the program?
Oh, yes. So we have lots of success stories. Every woman has an amazing testimony. So I can share with you that our first person that came to our first graduate, her name is Annie. And Annie was living in her car, and she came to see me on a day when it was pouring down rain. And she hadn't been sober very long. She lived in another part of Arkansas and was just really desperate to just become sober and get back in her community. She had been a school teacher, and she had worked for the Department of Human Services until her addiction overcame her. And then she had 8 felonies and had been in 2 different prisons in Oklahoma and Arkansas. So Annie spent her first year with us, and it was tough. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. She was angry and in my face a lot, but she persevered. And when she left here, which was in 2019, August of 2019, so she's been sober almost 6 years, and she paid it forward, and she went to work in a rehab place where she could be a consultant and coach those who are going through addiction. She's still sober today. While she was with us, she got her master's degree, and she's now a grandmother to 2, and still sober and doing extremely well.
That's amazing. A master's degree? Wow. Okay. That's amazing. What are some of the biggest challenges? I mean, this sounds like, just listening to her story, so I know some people are out there thinking this can't be that difficult then if she, she got her master's degree while she was still in recovery. What are some of the challenges that these women face that we might, that we don't know about? What are some of the things that they might face while they're transitioning back into everyday life that we take for granted maybe?
Absolutely. One of the characteristics of addiction is not understanding what love is, and so all they know is the physical love. So we have to really work with ladies to not be attracted and get off course and lose their focus, and to keep their focus on them and not another man or a person who will detract and cause them to lose focus. So that's an important thing that we have to overcome. The other thing that is difficult to overcome is just that we have structure, and they've not ever had structure before. And so their choices, whether they're good or bad, are still their choices. And so they come into our program and we have structure. You're going to give up your cell phone for the first 30 days. And then we're going to return it to factory settings, because we're going to remove all those people to whom you might have worked with or drugged with or drank with, and so they're not used to that. And then we have a routine. So there's a curfew, there's a time when we eat, and we sit down and eat together as a community. And our work ethic has to be important. So sometimes it's real simple for them to say, I don't really feel good and I'm not going to go to work, and they don't really feel bad, they just don't want to go to work. And so there are all of these thoughts and processes that we have to go through. And as much as we have like a set parameter that we work with, we also have to individualize each one for what each woman has experienced. And so a person who has been trafficked, we would work with in a different way than someone who maybe grew up in a wonderful household and just made choices that took them away from what we would call normal living or appropriate living. And so we have to look at them as individuals as well. And counseling is an important piece of that. So what are the histories and the things that impacted you and brought you to where you are today? And how do we get there to undo those things or to change that pattern? And so we look at the individuals in spite of having a whole, a foundation that we approach with the same with every person. Then there's also room for that individual to look and see what exactly it is that they need.
You talked about meals together and working and all that. Can you walk us through what a typical day looks like for a resident?
Sure. So we ask our ladies to be up by 8 a.m., which is really different because a lot of places say 4 a.m. or 6 a.m. We ask our ladies to be up by 8 a.m. And then we ask that by 9 o'clock that they be dressed, that their bed is made, that they've done their devotions and they've had breakfast. So in that hour, those things need to be done. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, if they're working, they're up earlier than that. But if you can, you're going to get up at 8, and then by 9 those things will be done. And so after that, then we look and see, is that person going to a job? Is that person going to meet with their mentor? Are they going to meet with their sponsor? Are they going to a recovery meeting? Are they going to be in a class, some kind of training? Are they going to be working with the program manager on communication skills or conflict resolution, anything like that? So, and then if they're home at lunch, then we have lunch together. We eat as a community. And if they're not, they pack a lunch if they work, or at noon, there's an AA meeting that they can go to. And then after lunch and after cleanup, and if there's time, a lot of times our ladies are going to take a nap. They're going to want to rest. Transition is hard and it's tiring, and so we encourage naps, not extreme, but get some rest and take care of yourself. Every woman has her laundry day, so it might be a day when she's going to do her laundry. Every woman has a day that she cooks and prepares for one meal together. And so what does that look like? And does she have the menu? Is she thawing meat? Do we have all the ingredients that she wants for that day? We also do etiquette training. So how do you set a table, and how do you clean up, and how do you, things like washing dishes, and how do you vacuum, and how do you scour a sink? Those are all things that we teach them that most of them don't know. I remember we have a glass top stove, and I remember one of our ladies, when she came in, she just poured bleach over the stove and thought that was the way to clean it. Another one of our ladies very recently that came to us, we were sitting down to eat, and she looked at me and she said, I've never sat at the table and eaten before and had a meal. So in other words, she was eating on the run or somewhere else, but never had sat down with anybody at a table to eat a meal. So those are all things that are new to them and that we have to work through. And then in the evening, our evenings are very full. So we're attending Celebrate Recovery, or Alcoholics Anonymous, or Narcotics Anonymous, or we're watching the Chosen series of Christian films, or we're talking about joy. We have other training in Not My Circle. What does your circle look like? How do you stay in your circle? How do you keep your focus? And so that's kind of how a day can be, any of that. And then on Sundays, our house is full with all the children who come and visit. And so each day is full, but it's different for each person depending on what they're looking at, their schedule for that day. They're going to meet with mentors and sponsors as well. And then they have homework. So they have their step study homework. And so the day is full. Every one of these ladies would tell you that very little grass grows under their feet. They're kept really busy.
I just found that incredibly sad when you said that woman had never actually sat down at the table, not ever. That's
Not
just,
ever,
just
not ever. And she was so uncomfortable about doing it. She really tried to resist. from doing it and was very nervous. And she's comfortable with it now after 4 weeks, but it was really difficult for her for the first week to do that. Now she's a pro. So she's in charge of lunch on Monday. And so she's got that already. She's got the table set and she's doing great, but it was just new for her.
That just breaks my heart that she's never had that experience of sitting down with your family and sharing a meal. That's just sad.
Yeah. Yeah. And she has 5 children, aging from 22 down to 9. And her first husband died, and then her ex-husband, her most recent ex-husband, they just found him dead 2 weeks ago. So there's all those emotions we're dealing with now too. So a lot of things we deal with, a lot of emotions, and we have to do it with love and patience and grace. And that's the only way we're going to make it happen.
Now, you emphasize not just sobriety, but you also talk about self-sufficiency. And I heard you talked about teaching them to do laundry and cooking and things like that, budgeting. What other skills do they learn?
We bring in a local bank who does banking 101, so the basics. What is banking terminology? How do you balance a checkbook? How do you track in your checkbook? How do you create a budget and then apply it to that? So our ladies, after they've been with us and they get their second paycheck, we do ask them to have a little skin in the game. So they pay program fees per month, but it's only $350. But they have to budget that. They have to budget any of their fines and fees that they might owe. Many of them have to pay child support and then their own phone. And then what does that look like for some of our ladies get a car? And then what does that look like? Insuring that car and putting fuel in the vehicle. And so it can vary per person, but we want to make them financially responsible in how they balance all of that so that they're not impulsive about what they spend. We encourage checking accounts and savings accounts, and we discourage debit cards, really, because debit card is just so easy. If there's money there, you use it, but it's hard to track. So we use the envelope method that a lot of people have heard of. So you put your receipt in these different envelopes. One might be for rent, one might be money orders for your fines, another might be for your phone, another might be for any hygiene items you bought, another might be for food that you buy. We provide most of the meals, which is unheard of in transitional living, but the ladies are able to go and get their favorite food or snack as well. But we just want to make sure that that's kept to a minimum. So we do talk about tracking your expenses and understand so that you're able to pay. Our ladies all have a savings account and a checking account by the time they leave. We've never had a woman have less than $1,000 when she leaves, and most of them have much more than that. So that's an important piece. We bring in the University of Arkansas Extension Office, and they do a 9-week cooking and nutrition class. So they learn how to cook recipes, learn how to cook. They learn how to clean up. They talk about nutrition, what nutritious meals looks like. And then they'll even maybe do some exercises and so forth during that time. So we make sure that they get all of those kinds of training and education. And again, like I said, we have 11 educators. So they're going to come in and meet one-on-one or as a group and talk about conflict resolution. How do we resolve those issues? What have we done before, and what do we need to change in the future to deal with conflict? And what does that look like? Communication. How do we communicate with people and let them know how we're feeling and what we're thinking? And an interesting experience with that was we had a young lady who was court ordered to us, and she had been in another transitional home and had talked about how different it was. And she had actually been released from that home, been kicked out of that home. And she came here and she said, we were like the cream of the crop, and it was wonderful. But I heard from the director of that other home who called me and said, hey, she's calling us, asking us if we have a vacancy, what's going on? And I got really upset. I thought, why would she want to leave? And when everything's going so well. And I was a little upset about that. And I asked her later, I said, why would you call and ask if there was a vacancy at the other place? I said, are you that unhappy, or what's going on? Have we not provided for your needs? What's going on? And she looked at me and said the most amazing thing. She said, because sometimes I feel such shame and guilt that I don't think I deserve to be here. And that was such an eye opener for me. And I pulled the car over because we were in the car and I was taking her to the doctor, and just had to tell her that you deserve to be here and you're worthy to be here. And God's not in the shame and guilt. This is your opportunity. But it was just amazing to me, because I'll be honest with you, I was a little angry with her. I thought, you're ungrateful. And, I was just ready to kind of just really have that conversation with her. And when she said, because I feel ashamed and I don't feel like I deserve this, it was an eye opener for me. So we don't always understand their thinking. And so communication is so important. And that's a part of that we work with, that you need to share your thoughts and do them in such a way that we know how to combat what that stinking thinking is in your brain that you don't voice. But so we've learned that we have to extend a lot of grace in a lot of areas because we don't understand all the things that they've experienced.
Now you say you're faith-based, which you explained to me how that's different from some others that aren't.
Yes, yeah. So we actually, our brochure and everything we say actually says Christ-centered. So today, faith-based means that you can practice any faith that you want. And we didn't want that. We believe that God is at the core of everything that we do. And that's the reason for our high success rate. We think it's really hard to do with Jesus and impossible without him. So that's how we explain it. But our ladies come here and they see, once they submit to and commit to doing this, how God will work in their lives, and how he'll just honor their commitment to serve him. And it's amazing. So we believe that's our secret.
Okay, so you are not exactly the typical faith-based, then you are definitely Christ-centered. I like that.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I've never run one, but I've been on the boards of a couple and I've worked for many. So I know that running a nonprofit is not easy. What are some of the biggest obstacles that you faced in getting Nicole's house off the ground and then growing to have the amazing success rate that you've had?
When I first received the commission from the Lord to do this, I sought out people and asked, where do I start? And the recommendation was, you need to start a grassroots rally. Have a grassroots rally, invite people, and just gauge the interest and see how interested they are in something like this in Northwest Arkansas. So in July of 2017, we had a grassroots rally. We invited prosecutors and judges and social workers and church groups and just anybody who felt like they might have an interest in seeing transitional living be productive and successful. We had over 50 people come to that, and we did receive an offering, and it was $2,200, and that's how we started. And that was in July of 2017. In October, we found the house where we are, and we're renting it, and we did renovations, and then we opened in January 8th of 2018. And finances are always a challenge. We have a sprinkler system because when we changed the function of the home that we're in, we had to have a sprinkler system to protect those who were here. But we put the word out and said we need that $12,000 to install that sprinkler. And in 10 days, we had that sprinkler system, the funding for it. So we are privately funded. We don't receive any government funding at all. During COVID, we received some. And it looks like maybe even we might have to pay some of that back because the guidelines were such that we may not have done that correctly, unknowingly, but still. But we're okay with not receiving funding. So we have fundraisers. We do 2 major fundraisers a year. And then we have a monthly donor program. So we have about 36 individuals right now who pledge anywhere from $3 a month to $500 a month towards Nicole's house. And so we have that foundational group of funding, which is about $5,000 or $6,000. And then we're raising the rest of that. The cost for Nicole's house right now is about $17,000 a month as our expenses. And we've just been blessed that God has provided through those fundraising sources. So our 8th annual Joy Comes in the Morning event is Wednesday, April the 9th. We'd love for people to come. It's at 7:30 a.m. It's a continental breakfast, and we're going to feed you. There's no ticket cost, so come and eat. And then we move into the auditorium, and the focus is really our ladies. So they get to share their journey and give their testimonies to you so you can see what God has done in their lives. And that's at Rogers First Church Nazarene, April 9th, 7:30 a.m. And there's no ticket cost. And then in September, Recovery Month, we do a couple different fundraisers. One is Change for Change. So we have the empty 7 brew cups, and people can take those cups home with them, fill it with all their change, or they can put cash or write a check and then bring it back in about a month. And we have about 25 churches that participate in that. And then we also do Nicole's Legacy Day of Giving. Nicole's birthday was in September as well. And so we ask people to give in her memory. And so that's how we fund things. And then there's a few grants that we can apply for as well. And so God's been good. So we've always had enough.
And we do live. That was one of the things I first noticed when I moved here, because I am not originally from here. One of the things I first noticed is that this is an amazingly giving part of the country.
Very much so. Very much so. Just amazing.
Yeah. I forget how many nonprofits there are here, but there's a lot. And they're all well funded. They're all well funded.
I think last count was like 2,500. I mean, it's a lot. But this is a wonderful community. Wonderful community to give.
Yep, they're all, and that's yeah, that was one of the very first things I noticed about this place was
yes,
you support your folks. It's that.
Yes.
Do you have any, like, I don't know, I know you do your couple of fundraisers, but if like a local business wanted to do something, are there ways that businesses can get involved?
There are several ways to get involved. So we also have in-kind donors. So we have people who help supply us with basic food needs, with paper products, with cleaning products. So it's a great way to get involved. We were just honored. I don't know if I'm allowed to say a company, but we had a company that provided with us with a year's supply of 33-gallon and kitchen-sized trash bags with saran wrap, Glad wrap, Ziploc baggies, and all of that. And so that's wonderful. We got that year's supply of that. We always need toilet paper, always need paper towels, basic food items, canned food, vegetables, fruits, boxed foods. And then, of course, gift cards to our #1 retailer here, because you can get clothing, you can get food, you can get fuel, and you can get cleaning products and anything you want with that. And so those are in-kind items that we are always in need of, and we appreciate. We probably get about $30,000 a year in-kind, which is so great, because if we had to spend money on those things, it probably would create a hardship for us financially. And then volunteers. Man, we love our volunteers. If you're a woman of faith and you'd like to walk alongside one of our ladies during her 1-year journey, we'd love to talk to you about being a mentor. We have a board of directors, and we meet the second Monday of the month in the evening. And if you have a passion to see women come out of addiction and go back into their communities successfully, we'd love to have you serve on our board of directors. We also have some administrative things that we could use help with. We could always use help with some transportation, taking our ladies where they need to be. We do as many as 22 transportations a day. So those are all the ways somebody can help who may not want to put out a dollar amount, but want to give of their time or their talents or their treasures in other ways.
Now, you talked about the fact that the recovery doesn't end when they graduate from your program and walk out the door, that it has to continue. So how do you continue to support these women after they do graduate?
We are the only transitional living that I know of. I know for sure in the state of Arkansas, but I think pretty much in every other state is we have what's called a graduate program. So we have exclusive use of an apartment building in Bentonville. And when our ladies fulfill their 1 year here, when they graduate, they are allowed to go there. And those are furnished apartments, 2-bedroom furnished apartments, all utilities paid at a discounted rate. And they can live there for an additional year while they're working on saving more money, while they're working on my being able to say that as their landlord that they paid the rent on time, and allows them to have their children back with them as well. And we work with them on getting custody of their children back. And they're fully furnished, like I said, with a stackable washer and dryer, microwave over the oven, a dishwasher, 2 bedrooms, fully furnished ones, queen beds, twin beds in the other. And they're just absolutely lovely places for them to go and to live. Well, there is no felon-friendly housing, really. And so this gives them a year for me to be able to say that they pay their rent on time, which hopefully would help them when they go to look for a rental somewhere else. And but apartment communities are not going to rent to somebody who has a felony. They're going to charge you $50, $60 for a credit check and a criminal background check, and then turn you down. And so we're delighted that these apartments are available to our ladies for another year so they can build up that credit and prove themselves accountable and fiscally responsible.
If you could expand Nicole's house, I mean, you already have this wonderful program, and then you have the support program afterwards, but if you could expand it, what would that look like?
Actually, where we're at, the property where we're at, the people who own it own the whole city block. So my dream was, when we first started 7 years ago, was that we would use this whole city block. There's 3 homes on it and a retail location. And so I thought that we could sell merchandise in the retail location, invite other nonprofits that have products to sell, and then we would graduate through the house. So the women would come to the initial house, and then as they earned more trust and had more responsibility, they could graduate to the other houses, and that would allow us to accommodate another 10 or 12 women. But that didn't work out, and the landlord had told me that he was open to that. I ran a capital campaign and raised those funds, and then they made a different decision because they had inherited the property at such a low rate that at the rate it was worth now, they would have to pay so much in taxes and windfall and so forth that it wasn't worth it to them. So they were going to wait and give it to their children so they could inherit it. So that was my dream at the beginning. I know that some of my board members have a desire to add on and add more houses. I'm not in a position, just personally, because I'm 73, to anticipate whether I want to take that project on and raise more funding and have more staff and be responsible for more women. But if my board comes along with a plan, or somebody comes along with a plan, we'll certainly entertain it, and we'd love to be able to serve more people if we could. But we want to do it well. And sometimes when you expand and you do more, sometimes you take away from your effectiveness. And so, but I'm open to that. If somebody wants to come along and say, hey, I'll get behind you, we'll do this, I'm open to it.
You mentioned you were 73. Number one, I would never have guessed when I met you when you told me that. It's like, you are not. But what has leading this organization? I mean, good grief, most women of your age are home knitting, playing with grandkids, whatever, tending the garden. What have you learned about yourself with this whole experience?
Oh, I've learned so much because when I first started, I was I was pretty harsh, actually, and pretty straightforward. And I didn't understand how to balance grace with directness. And so I think some people would have thought that I was kind of mean at first. And so I've really had to learn to soften that, but to still remain firm and have the boundaries, but do it in such a way that that it's received better. I think these women are so used to people just yelling at them and saying things that's that puts them on the defensive. And so I've learned how to soften that. And so I think I've come a long way there. And then as the years have progressed, we've been able to add staff. And so that's been very helpful too, taken a lot of the burden off of me, that I now have a program manager. We have 2 full-time house leaders that live in night and day to be with the ladies and to help the ladies. So that's helped a lot too. So I don't feel the burden, the pressure as much as I used to, because I have those other people who've come alongside of us to help. So
This might be a little, I don't know, a little personal maybe, but I know you said you run a fundraiser on Nicole's birthday, and I'm sure that there's times when this whole thing is emotionally heavy.
yeah.
This was your daughter that started her death basically was the impetus to start this whole thing. So how are you taking care of yourself and staying motivated?
That's a good question. So my husband and I are ministers, and so we operate the Northwest Arkansas Healing Room, and we're also worship musicians. So those are things that we do that that is self-care for me, because I love to worship and I love to minister to people who are hurting. But you're right. So I am reminded every day that my daughter is dead. And so that is a difficult one. But when I can turn around and see the successes and the people who are walking out the door permanently sober and excited about life and being responsible, that is my reward. So that's how I do it. And I do rest a lot. I know how to say no.
Now, I've actually met some ladies who have talked about starting a nonprofit, and I'm not going to say about what because it's their thing, and I don't want to. I hope it does happen, though. It'll be good. But what advice would you give to someone who wanted to start a nonprofit or some sort of mission-driven organization?
I would love to meet with them, and I will share anything that I know. I don't feel competitive at all. I know some people do, but I know we need more of everything. And so I'm happy to help somebody who wants to start that. But I love meeting with them and sharing with them how to begin filing the short form 1023 for the 501c3, and what those legalities are, and what the articles of incorporation look like, and how to register with the state, with the Secretary of State in Arkansas. I'm happy to share all that information and help write bylaws. I mean, I'm willing to do any of it. And then there's at least one company that is dedicated to helping people launch nonprofits and to help consult with them. And so I would connect them with that person as well. And just anticipate what your costs are. How do you have that grassroots rally to find out who's interested in supporting? And I'll help them in any way that I can. So I'm happy to do that.
You listed off a lot of ways that our listeners can support you, from volunteering to financial. How do we reach you? How do we reach out to you if we want to help?
Our website is nicoleshouse.info. And within that are testimonies. Within that is a volunteer application that tells the different ways you can volunteer. Our admission application is there if you would like to apply to be a resident at Nicole's house. Our donate button gives you like 5 options, 5 ways to give. And then we also encourage people to think about being a monthly supporter. If they can be a monthly donor, which we call our Joy Keeper, that's the bread and butter for Nicole's house. That's our financial foundation. So all of that information is there, but you can also email me. There's a place where you can click to contact, and so you can email me there as well. and ask any questions. I'm pretty good about responding the same day. So I will be as responsive as I can, because I appreciate anyone who has an interest in anything. I want to encourage them as soon as I can. So I'm there for them. So.
That's awesome. And there's an actual, I did not know there was a company that would help with that. That's awesome. I'm going to tell them to reach out to you.
Yes, and then I'm happy to help any way I can, and I can refer them on to this company. It's called Studivate. I'm happy to pass them on to that person as well who can help.
So before we wrap up, is there a message of hope or encouragement that you'd like to leave, with anyone that's struggling with addiction, or maybe supporting a family member or a loved one who's struggling?
Well, I have a wonderful story that I can tell. I don't know how much time I have, but there's a gentleman, a pastor out there by the name of Dan. Oh gosh, his last name, it'll come to me but anyway, he primarily works with people in addiction, and he's a pastor in Philadelphia, but he travels all over talking to people in addiction. And he told this story. He said, one of my ladies had gone to a drug house, and I went to search for her. He parked his car in the drug neighborhood. He put his elbow through the window rested his elbow on the window of the car, of his truck, and somebody came along and grabbed his hand, and grabbed his elbow, and said, "What's a person like you doing in a place like this?" And he said he turned around and grabbed her hand there on his elbow and said, "The more important question is, what is a person like you doing in a place like this? Because if you knew the plans that God had for you, you'd make different choices." And this was about a year and a half after Nicole had passed. And I sat there and I cried and I went, oh my gosh, if only I had said those things to her. There was no condemnation. There was no reason to be defensive. But instead I said, you can't, you never, you won't, you aren't. Instead of saying, if you knew the choices that God had for you, or if you knew the plans God had for you, you'd make different choices. And so that's what I say to our ladies today. If you knew the plans that God had for you, you'd make different choices. And that's what I leave them with, because God has great plans for them. They just have to make a choice to do that. There's no condemnation in that. There's no criticism in that. It puts the ball in their court. You get to choose, because God can do great things, but you make the choice what you want to do.
Well, Sandra,
and that's where I'm coming from.
That is quite a story. I don't even know how to follow up with that one, because I say that all the time to my own family. It's like, God has such great things planned for you if you would just stop and listen.
Yeah,
and let
absolutely.
him.
And his name was Dan Muller. His name came to my mind. So, and I think we have a scripture, Isaiah 42:22 is our scripture that we use. And that says that these are people who are beaten and plundered. Many of them are trapped and hidden away in caves. They've been made a loot and a spoil, with none to say, restore. So that's our scripture message. And that's how we tell people, thank you for helping us to say restore. That scripture says these people, nobody knows they're there. They're hidden away in caves or prisons. And so we're bringing them forth. And with the help of our volunteers and the community, we're seeing these women restored. We've seen 71 women restored. So that scripture drives us.
Well, Sandra, I thank you so much for sharing the story of Nicole's house. Once I met you and saw what you were doing, I knew I had to get this out there, because there is such a need right now for a place for these women to go and be helped.
Yes.
To claim the life that they should be living instead of the one they are. So
Yeah.
I thank you
We're
for
honored to do that.
And if this touched you in any way, please like, share, comment, whatever you need to do to get this message out there, because Nicole's house is doing amazing work, and they need support to help the women. And the women that are out there, if you know them, please get this in front of them, because there's so many women right now that need this help. And I thank you so much. We'll see you on our next episode.
Thank you.